Grandpa kicks in the door on Thanksgiving and uncovers a chilling secret. On Thanksgiving morning, I showed up at my daughter's place without warning and walked smack into a scene I'll never forget. My grandson was outside in 15-degree weather, shivering in a t-shirt and shorts like he'd been tossed out with the trash. Inside, I could see everybody gathered at the table, cozy and smiling, passing turkey around like a magazine ad brought to life. I felt something in me snap. I put my boot to that door, knocked it in, and said 6 cold words that wiped the color off every face in that dining room. And believe me, that was just the opening act of the justice that ended up remaking their lives. Before I get into it, do me a favor, hit subscribe and drop a quick comment telling me what time it is where you're watching from. All right, back to it. My phone buzzed against the dash of my old Chevy. A text from my neighbor Ray. Saw squad cars at the Millers again. Domestic call. Made me think of you and your family worries. I stared at the message while the engine idled rough. The Millers. Yeah, Linda used to worry about their grandson too, back when she was still here to worry about anything. Now it's just me and that knot in my gut that shows up anytime I think about my daughter Jessica's marriage. The clock read 2:30 p.m. Time to move. I slipped the truck into reverse and eased off my driveway onto Miller Street. Snow had started an hour earlier. Big, wet flakes sticking to everything, making the roads greasy and mean. The radio spit out weather advisories as I merged onto I-75 south toward Cincinnati. Classic rock station, same one Linda and I always kept on. Led Zeppelin was pounding through the speakers, heavy enough to match my mood. On the passenger seat sat 2 gift bags, one with a real leather baseball glove for my grandson. Ethan, cost more than I planned, but he's worth it. The other was stuffed with superhero comics he's been into since he was a kid. He's 18 now and might think he's past that, but I remember 18. You don't outgrow heroes. You just start needing them for different reasons. Family's what we've got left, Linda used to tell me whenever I grumbled about holiday visits. She'd been right then, and she's right now, even if her voice only lives in my head these days. Since I lost her 6 months back, every get-together feels delicate, like the wrong word might shatter it. The wipers struggled against the slushy buildup, and hazard lights blinked ahead of me like nervous fireflies. I kept both hands on the wheel, steady at 40. No point getting there if I land upside down in a ditch. The mile markers counted down to Cincinnati. I tried calling Jessica's house. Figured I'd give a heads up and keep the surprise from being too dramatic. 6 rings and voicemail. Odd. Folks are usually home on Thanksgiving afternoon. A gas station glowed out of the gray like a lighthouse. I filled up, grabbed a coffee and a bag of peppermints, Ethan's favorite. The clerk, a tired-eyed kid, shook his head at the snow. Roads are going bad fast, he said, beeping my stuff. You going far? Just to Cincinnati. Family dinner. Drive safe. Seen 3 wrecks already. Back in the cab, I checked the time, 3:05 p.m. Normally that drive runs 45 minutes. Today it'd be closer to an hour. My mind wandered to Ethan, maybe helping his mom in the kitchen, maybe watching football with Todd, his stepfather. He'd grown a foot since summer, back when we fished Lake Erie together. He'd landed his first base and grinned like he'd won the World Series. That's also when I noticed the bruise on his arm. Said he fell off his bike. The print looked too much like fingers. I should have pushed. Linda would have known what to ask, how to ask it. Snow thickened as I took exit 15 for Jessica's neighborhood. 2-story homes with pumpkins and wreaths out front. A few folks already had their Christmas lights twinkling through the curtain of white. I crept into the Maple Grove subdivision, warm squares of light spilling out of windows onto snow-covered lawns. It looked like the kind of day that could heal things. Linda would have wanted that. Jessica's street appeared, and there was her place at the end, the blue 2-story with white shutters. Todd's pickup sat next to her sedan. Smoke drifted from the chimney, and the porch was covered in holiday decor. Peaceful, normal, exactly how you'd want it. I eased into the driveway behind Todd's truck. The engine ticked as it cooled. Music hummed from inside, something warm and old-fashioned. Little string lights winked around the door frame. Then I saw him. Ethan was hunched on the front steps, arms locked around his knees. No coat, no hat, just a thin long sleeve and jeans dusted with snow. His shoulders shook, not just from the cold, but something deeper than that. Jesus, I muttered, flinging my door open. Wind slapped me in the face with stinging crystals. By the time I reached him, took maybe 5 seconds, His lips were blue, and he had his hands jammed under his armpits to hold on to whatever warmth he had left. "Ethan," I called, sliding on the icy walkway. "What are you doing out here, kiddo?" He looked up, and the relief in his eyes hit me hard. His face was chalky pale with red bites from the cold. "Grandpa," he whispered, teeth chattering like dice in a cup. I can't." My coat was already off and around him before he finished. He was ice cold from head to toe, shivering like a leaf in a storm. "Can't what?" I asked, steadying him when his knees dipped. "How long have you been sitting out here?" "I'm not allowed," he said, pulling my coat tighter. I could feel him shaking through the heavy fabric. "I'm not allowed to go inside." That hit like a punch. Through the bright windows I heard laughter and TV noise, warmth and celebration. And my grandson was outside like a stray. "Not allowed how?" My voice came out sharper than I meant as the rage rose in my chest like a fire catching. "This is your home." He flinched, so I softened. The last thing he needed was one more adult barking orders. "Please don't make it worse," he whispered, eyes flicking to the door. "If Todd hears you." I looked at the house, really looked. Then back at my grandson, blue-lipped and shaking in clothes that wouldn't keep you warm at 50 degrees. "Never mind this." "How long, Ethan?" I kept it gentle but firm. "How long have you been out here?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. Since this morning." This morning? I checked my watch. A little after 3:15. "Son, it's below freezing. You could get frostbite. You could." I cut myself off before I scared him more than he already was. I tried the front handle, locked. Of course it was. They had locked him out of his own house on Thanksgiving, sitting him in the deep freeze while they carved turkey. "We're warming you up," I said, guiding him to my truck. "Cab's warm." Even as I moved, my brain was collecting facts. The flinch when I raised my voice, the bruise I'd noticed months ago, the careful, small way he moved. This wasn't a one-time discipline stunt. This was a routine. Once he was in the passenger seat, I cranked the heat on max and wrapped a blanket from my emergency kit over my coat on his shoulders. His fingers were too numb to work, so I rubbed them between my palms, coaxing life back. "Talk to me, buddy," I said, keeping my tone steady even though rage was tightening every screw in my chest. "What happened this morning?" His eyes stayed on his hands. "I was helping Mom with the turkey. She asked me to check it while she showered." His voice got small. "I forgot to turn off the timer when I took it out." "You missed a timer?" "It got a little burn on top. Not ruined, just darker." He finally looked up, fear plain in his eyes. "Todd came in and lost it." "Lost it how?" My jaw clenched so hard I felt it in my ears. "He yelled about me ruining the entire holiday. Said the guests would think Mom couldn't cook. Said I embarrassed the family." He tugged the blanket tighter. "Then he said I needed to think about my actions and I couldn't come back in until I learned responsibility." "And your mom?" I asked, harder than I meant to. She tried to say something, but he told her to stay out of it, said it was between him and me. He swallowed. She didn't say anything after that. I checked my watch again, 3:20. "What time did this happen?" "About 11. 4.5 hours. In killer cold. For a turkey top that got too dark." I breathed deep so I wouldn't shout. "Has this happened before?" I asked. Silence hung between us. He weighed the risk of telling the truth against the relief of someone finally listening. "Sometimes," he whispered. "Last month he made me stand in the garage all night because I forgot the trash. Once he locked me in the basement for 2 days because I broke one of his beers." Each word felt like a hammer to my chest. I looked at this good kid, careful and quiet, the kind of boy who doesn't hurt people, and saw the way he'd learned to take up as little space as possible. "Your mother knows?" "She says Todd's trying to teach me discipline. Says I need to be more responsible." His voice cracked. "Maybe she's right. Maybe I am." "Don't," I said, turning toward him fully. "Don't put this on yourself. What he's doing isn't discipline. It's abuse. And it ends today." Ethan's eyes got wide with panic. "No, Grandpa. If you make a scene, he'll take it out on me later. He always does." Through the windshield, the house glowed warm and inviting. Holiday music and the clink of dishes. Inside, my daughter served dinner while her son hid in a truck hoping to thaw out. It dizzied me. "Listen," I said, taking his hands again. "You're 18. You don't have to live like this. I'm not leaving you here." "Where would I go?" he asked quietly. "I don't have money. I can't pay for college without. You're coming home with me tonight." Saying it out loud locked it into place. "We'll figure the rest out." Hope and fear wrestled across his face. He wanted to believe, but he'd been taught not to. He won't let me leave, Ethan said. He'll call the cops. Say you kidnapped me or I stole something. I stared at the house until something hard and cold settled in my chest. Linda had always been the diplomat, the smoother of rough edges. But she isn't here. Diplomacy didn't keep Ethan out of the cold. Let me deal with Todd, I said, pushing open my door. Right now, we're getting your things. Snow crunched under my boots. Ethan scrambled out behind me, my coat still swallowing him. The front door was locked, and I had no plans to knock. My hands shook, not just from the wind, but from a slow-growing rage finally hitting full speed. Why didn't you tell me it was this bad? I asked, taking a longer look at his face. Faint yellowed bruises dotted his jawline. I tried to hint, he said, hugging my coat closer. But when you call Mom, a memory hit like a slap. A month ago, Ethan called while I was cooking. Grandpa, Todd says I can't eat with them. Says I have to earn my way back to the table. I treated it like teenage drama, called Jessica the next day, and she brushed it off like she was swatting a fly. Dad, you're overreacting. Normal discipline. Ethan exaggerates. Another memory, summer. He'd sounded worn out. Mom, Todd yelled at me about dishes. Made me wash everything twice. Jessica told me he was dramatic. Todd's teaching responsibility, she'd said. How long has it been like this? I asked, already knowing the answer would level me. Since Mom married him 3 years ago. Barely a whisper. It started small. Got worse. I thought of that summer fishing trip. How he didn't want to go home. How he asked if we could stay another day and went quiet when I said we couldn't. The basement, I said, connecting dots. And the garage, how many times? More than I want to count. He looked at his hands. Last winter, he locked me out for missing the driveway shoveling. I slept in your truck on Christmas Eve when you visited. My truck. He froze on Christmas Eve while I drank eggnog in their living room. The guilt felt like lightning. Your mother knows all of this? I asked. He nodded, miserable. She says I'm too sensitive. Says I need to follow rules. The heat in my chest sharpened and narrowed. Linda used to tell me to count to 10 when my temper flared. She's not here. Counting won't warm my grandson. I stood, still keeping my coat around him. We're going inside. Grandpa, please, if you make a scene. He'll do what? Make you sleep outside? Hit you? Starve you? My voice went iron. Son, it doesn't get much worse. You don't know how he gets when he's challenged, he said, eyes on the door. I was already moving. The door was one of those solid, pricey ones Todd probably bragged about. I didn't knock. I planted my boot just off the latch and drove it with everything 50 years on the line gave me. Wood splintered, the slab slammed back, and warm air spilled out carrying the smell of turkey and shock. We stepped into the entry. Ethan tucked close behind me. The dining room looked like a magazine spread. White cloth, candles, crystal catching light. Todd sat at the head in a pressed shirt, carving knife in hand. Jessica wore a green dress I didn't recognize. A younger girl, Sophie, 10 maybe, sat across with a fork halfway to her mouth. Everybody froze, mid-motion, like a paused movie. The contrast almost made me sick. They were warm, fed, and comfortable while Ethan had been outside for over 4 hours. The turkey was picture-perfect, probably a replacement for the one he'd ruined. Everything was charming, except for the part where they left a kid to freeze. Have you lost your minds? I thundered. Sophie flinched and dropped her fork. Jessica went paper white. A spoon clattered from her hand and splashed gravy across the cloth. Dad, she squeaked. What are you? How did you? While you sit here feasting like royalty, that boy was freezing. I pointed at Ethan wrapped in my coat, still shaking in the warm air. 4 hours, Jessica. 4 hours that could have killed him. Todd set the knife down and stood. He was bigger than I remembered, probably had 50 pounds on me, but I've seen bigger men fold. Anger evens the odds. Who told you could enter my home? His voice was controlled and edged, like a man used to being obeyed. He rounded the table slow, puffed up, measuring me like I was a problem he could intimidate away. You're home. I stepped forward to meet him. You mean the place where you locked my grandson outside to freeze while you ate? Sophie started crying. Jessica reached for her, eyes fixed on me, stuck between her father and her husband with a look that said even she wasn't sure which was which right now. This is a private family matter, Todd snapped, voice rising. You have no business. No business. I could feel my face heating. That's my grandson, you nearly froze. Ethan pressed into my side. He was trembling again, not just from cold. He knew what happened when anyone stood up to Todd in this house. Soft holiday music still played in the background, some cheesy song about gratitude and family. The irony would have been funny if I weren't seeing red. I pointed at Ethan. Take a good look at him, Todd. Look at what you did. Todd crossed his arms, chin tipped up. He ruined our holiday. He needed a lesson in responsibility. A lesson? I could hardly believe the words. You almost froze a kid over a turkey skin that got too dark. He's 18, not a child. And this is my house, my rules. He slid into that patronizing tone men use when they think they sound reasonable. I'm teaching discipline, something his mother failed to teach for 17 years. Jessica flinched, but said nothing, sat there in that green dress like she was watching a tennis match instead of her kid's life. Discipline. I moved closer, close enough to see the wine stain on his lip. It's called abuse. You're lucky I don't call the cops right now. Abuse. He actually laughed, cold and empty. He ruined a $20 turkey. I sent him out to think about it. That's parenting. For 4 hours? In single digits? He's being dramatic, like always, Todd said, flicking his hand. Look, he's fine. A little cold never hurt anyone. I glanced at Ethan, blue lips, rattling shoulders. This man thought hypothermia was fine. Dad, please, Jessica finally said, voice shaking. Don't ruin our holiday. We can discuss this later. Ruin your holiday? I stared at her. Your son was freezing on the porch while you ate. That's the part you're worried about? She stared down at her plate. Todd slid between us, face flushing. Because this is my house, he snapped. And Ethan isn't my blood. I'll discipline him as I see fit. There it was, the core truth. Not his blood, not his concern. You've got 30 seconds to apologize to my grandson, I said, voice calm and flat. He barked another laugh. I don't know that boy anything. If he doesn't like my rules, he can live somewhere else. Sophie cried harder. Jessica shushed her. I barely heard them. All I saw was Todd's smug face and 4 hours of snow on my grandson's shoulders. Somewhere else to live. I stepped close enough to smell the Cabernet. You're right about that much. I pulled my phone out slow so everybody understood what I was thinking. Todd's expression cracked at the edges. Apologize to Ethan right now, I said, level as a plumb line. Or I call Child Protective Services and report your abuse. You wouldn't dare. He crowded in, trying to win by size. Try me, I said, thumb hovering as I started to dial. I'll start with leaving a teenager outside for 4 hours in 5-degree weather. Ethan gripped my sleeve from behind, still trembling. This wasn't cold anymore. This was learned terror, the kind that teaches you standing up only makes it worse. Dad, please, Jessica said, stepping between us, palms out. Don't blow up our family. I'm not blowing up anything, I said, eyes locked on Todd. He did that when he chose to hurt my grandson. Abuse. Todd's laugh turned bitter. I'm teaching responsibility, something his weak mother never did. Jessica flinched like she'd been slapped and still didn't defend herself. Get out of my house, old man, Todd barked, voice booming. You've got no authority here. Ethan is my responsibility. Your responsibility? I swept a look around the pretty table and then back to the bruises on Ethan's jaw. This is how you handle responsibility? Lock kids outside to freeze. Sophie sobbed. Jessica tried to soothe her. Her eyes kept flicking between me and Todd like she was waiting for someone to swing. He's not a kid, Todd said, squaring up again. He's 18. Adults who can't follow simple instructions face adult consequences. Adult consequences for forgetting a timer? Adult consequences for being careless and embarrassing this family in front of guests, he shot back, waving at the empty chairs, the ones that told me people had been here eating while Ethan froze and nobody spoke up. Grandpa, let's just go, Ethan whispered. Please, I don't want more trouble. That defeated tone broke something in me. This boy had been ground down so far he thought asking for warmth was making trouble. You're not the problem, I said loud enough for the room. You never were. I looked back at Todd. Everything inside me went cold and clear. 30 seconds to apologize. I'm not apologizing to anybody, he said, arms crossed, chin high. And I'm not taking orders from some bitter old man who can't accept that his precious grandson needed discipline. Then we're done, I said, sliding the phone back in my pocket. Ethan, get your things. You're coming with me. The room went so quiet, even the music felt ashamed. Sophie hiccuped. Jessica whispered, "You can't just take him." "Watch me," I said, laying a hand on Ethan's shoulder and steering him toward the stairs. "Pack what you need. We're leaving." "Dad, you can't do this," Jessica pleaded, trailing us. "You can't just walk in and take my son." "I can and I am," I said, keeping my body between Ethan and the rest. "Unless you want me to call this in right now." Todd's boots thumped behind us on the hardwood. "This is kidnapping," he barked. "I'll have you arrested." Good luck explaining why he was outside in 5 degrees for 4 hours, I called back. At the top of the stairs, Ethan led me down a narrow hall to a small, cold room at the back, barely big enough for a twin bed and a little dresser. No heat vent I could see, a north-facing window that leaked cold right through the glass. Looked more like storage than a bedroom, the worst room in the house. "This where you sleep?" I asked. He nodded, already pulling clothes and stuffing a duffel. "Todd says the basement room is for guests and the other upstairs room is for my sister." He didn't say our sister. He said my, like even the word wouldn't let him in. "Take everything that matters," I said, standing guard in the doorway. "We're not coming back." "Ethan, think about this," Jessica said, appearing in the doorway with wet cheeks. "This is your home. Your family." "Some family," he muttered, folding a Dayton sweatshirt. "Real families don't lock you outside." "Todd was trying to teach responsibility," she said. "By giving me hypothermia?" Ethan looked at her, 3 years of hurt showing. "He made me sleep in the garage last week for leaving a glass in the sink." "A glass?" I said. "That's not normal." "He has high standards," Jessica said weakly. "He wants you to be better. He wants me gone," Ethan said, zipping his bag. "And you know it." We headed downstairs. Todd waited at the bottom like a nightclub bouncer. "You walk out, boy, don't come back." "Fine by me," Ethan said, and for the first time all day, his voice had steel in it. The front door still hung open from my kick. Cold air poured in, making the decorations flutter like tired leaves. My truck idled in the drive, exhaust fogging the air. "Ethan," Jessica called as we reached the threshold. "Please don't do this. I love you." He turned once. "If you loved me, Mom, you wouldn't have let this happen." We crossed to the truck without a word, our breath hanging in the air. I tossed his bag in the bed, settled him in the cab, and circled to the driver's door. Through the front window, I could see the 3 of them standing in the entry. Jessica crying, Todd red and vibrating with rage, Sophie peeking from behind the wall. "You ready?" I asked as I dropped it into reverse. "I've been ready for 3 years," he said, pulling my coat tight. We rolled onto the street past glowing houses where families were finishing dinner in peace. Classic rock still hummed. The heater pumped steady warmth. And for the first time all afternoon, Ethan looked like he could breathe. "Thanks, Grandpa," he said quietly as we turned toward the main road. "I can't believe you came." "I should have come sooner," I said. "I should have seen it." "I tried to tell you," he said. "I just didn't know how." We rode in a quiet that felt good. The old weight of family duty settled over my shoulders like Linda's favorite quilt. This boy needed protection. He needed a safe place to become the man he's supposed to be. "Tell me about school," I said, merging onto I-75 North. "What are you studying?" "Mechanical engineering," he said, voice stronger now. "Like you ran on those machines at the plant." "Like Grandpa, like grandson." I smiled and pictured Linda's proud grin. "We'll figure out tuition. Don't worry." "I don't want to be a burden," he said. "You aren't," I told him. "Your family. Family takes care of each other." My driveway looked smaller with both trucks parked there, but the house itself felt brighter. I'd left the porch light on. Habit, and I was glad for that little beacon now. "Home sweet home," I said, carrying his bag to the door. The key turned easy. Warm air swam out to greet us. The place smelled like coffee and Linda's lavender sachets, still tucked in drawers where she left them. It's not fancy. Old furniture, carpet past its prime, but it's paid off and it's ours. "You remember the guest room?" I asked, flipping lights. "Down the hall next to yours," he said, looking around with this look. "Relief, I think. It's warm. Thermostat's 72 all year." I grinned. "Your grandma always said life's too short to be cold in your own house." I showed him the guest room, double bed under one of Linda's quilts, dresser, reading chair by the window. Family photos lined the wall. Ethan at 8 with a fish, Ethan at 12 with a cake. Ethan last summer on the dock. It had always been his room when he visited. Seeing him put his bag down, like he belonged, felt right for the first time since the funeral. I'll get dinner going, I said. Nothing fancy. Chicken and the vegetables that need using. Can I help? He asked, wanting to earn his place. I mean, I'd like to. Sure, I said. But you don't have to. This isn't a job. This is home. We moved around each other in the kitchen like we'd been doing it for years. I thawed chicken, he washed carrots and potatoes. Slowly, the tension slid off his shoulders. Tell me the rest, I said, grinding pepper. From when your mom married Todd. He quieted, running the peeler in steady strokes. It started with little things, how I loaded the dishwasher, where I put my shoes. Then it got bigger. How big? He controls everything. When I eat, what I eat, when I can shower, when I can touch my phone. His voice shrank. He made Mom choose between him and me. She chose him. I had to set the seasoning down and grab the counter. What do you mean, choose? Last Christmas when you visited, he said. Remember how quiet I was? Todd told me I wasn't allowed to speak unless someone asked me a direct question. Mom didn't stop him. The memory punched a hole right through me. I thought he was being a sulky teen. I even joked to Linda's photo later that kids don't know how to talk anymore. Why doesn't your mom stand up to him? I asked. She's scared, he said, chopping carrots with machine-like focus. She told me if she leaves him, she'll lose the house and have to go back to the old apartments. She says she can't afford us alone. I slid the chicken into the oven and lit a fire in the living room. The small work of rolling newspaper and stacking kindling calmed me down. Sit with me, I said once the flames took. Give me some good news. Talk school and friends. We sank into the chairs by the fire, and for the first time all day he smiled. I made Dean's list, he said. And my buddy Jason, he's teaching me guitar. Your grandmother always wanted to learn. I pointed at the old photo of Linda at 20, laughing with an acoustic guitar in her lap. She said music was the soul's language. I remember, he said softly. I miss her. Me too. We talked until the kitchen timer dinged. Simple dinner tasted like a feast because we were safe. I watched him across the table. The fear had slipped out of his eyes and left room for something I hadn't seen in a long time. Hope. We'll call the college in the morning, I said. We'll square your aid. If you want a part-time job, we'll find one. Grandpa, you don't have to do all this. I do, I said. That's what family's for. We were finishing a couple of slices of frozen pie I'd heated up when the phone rang. The sound cut through the calm, and I saw Ethan tighten up like a spring. Caller ID, Jessica. Before I could decide whether to pick up, 3 sharp knocks rattled the front door, authoritative, not friendly. Multiple voices on the porch. Grandpa? Ethan's mug clinked against the saucer. Stay behind me, I said, setting my cup down and walking to the door. I flipped on the porch light and checked the peephole. 2 officers in uniform. Behind them, flanked like wolves waiting for a weakness, Todd and Jessica. Mr. Walker, the lead officer called. Police. We need a word. I opened the door and made sure my body blocked their view of Ethan. Evening, officers. What can I do for you? Todd surged forward, finger out like a spear. Officer, this man kidnapped my stepson. He broke into my home and took him. The lead officer, middle-aged, tired eyes, lifted a hand without looking at Todd. Sir, we'll sort it out. Mr. Walker, is there a young man named Ethan Clark here tonight? Yes, I said. My grandson is here. He kidnapped him. Todd raised his voice like he thought volume could make a lie true. Kicked in our door like a criminal and dragged him away. Is the young man here voluntarily? The second officer asked, notepad out. Before I could speak, Ethan stepped beside me, still wrapped in my couch blanket. His voice was soft but steady. I want to stay with my grandpa. Todd's face went crimson. See? He's filling the boy's head with lies, turning him against his family. What lies? I asked. The one where you left him in single-digit temps for 4 hours? Or the one where you've been abusing him for 3 years? Abuse. Todd forced a laugh. I was teaching responsibility. He ruined Thanksgiving dinner and needed consequences. The lead cop looked like he'd seen 1,000 of these and didn't enjoy a single one. Mr. Walker, let's all step inside and talk calmly. I stepped back. The officers entered. Todd shouldered past like he owned the place. Jessica behind him, small and pale, and staring at the floor. All right, the officer said, flipping his pad. Mr. Clark, you're alleging kidnapping? Absolutely, Todd said, puffing up into his reasonable authority act. I came home to a broken door and a missing boy. Neighbors saw an older man force him into a truck. Forcing, I repeated. Officer, I rescued my grandson from child endangerment. That's his story, Todd said, shaking his head sadly. Truth is, he never approved of our marriage. He's been waiting to stir trouble. The officer turned to Ethan. I felt him shake next to me. Son, did your grandfather force you to go? No, sir, Ethan said. He saved me. Saved you from what? From freezing to death on the porch, Ethan said, darting a look at Todd and then back to the cop. I burned the turkey a little. Todd made me sit outside to think. I was out there 4 hours. It's 5 degrees. He's exaggerating, Todd cut in. Maybe an hour. And he was dressed warm. An hour, I said. Officer, I got here around 3:15. He was in a thin shirt and jeans. He'd been out since 11 o'clock. The lead officer's eyes shifted to Todd. Sir, did you make him sit outside as punishment? Briefly, Todd said. He's making it sound worse. In sub-freezing temperatures? For hours? Todd's cool started to crack. Teenagers need firm discipline. His mother and I agreed. Mom didn't agree, Ethan said, voice gaining an edge. She just didn't stop him. Every eye turned to Jessica, who'd been quiet as wallpaper. She stood like someone on a cliff, knowing whatever came next would change her life. Hands clenched, eyes bouncing between Todd's warning glare and her son's hope. Ma'am, the officer prompted gently. What happened today? Todd stepped closer to her, subtle, looming, a practiced intimidation. The officer saw it too. Sir, give your wife space to answer. Jessica's voice was barely there. She cleared her throat. Ethan did burn the turkey a little. And, the officer said. And Todd was upset. Very upset, she said, eyes skittering off Todd's and back to the floor. He said Ethan needed to learn responsibility. By leaving him outside in freezing weather? She nodded, ashamed. Todd said it would teach him to be careful. How long, ma'am? She glanced again at Todd's face, which had gone rigid. Since about 11. Until when? Until my dad arrived, she said, smaller with each word. Around 3:15. The officer did quick math. Over 4 hours. In 5 degrees. She's making it sound worse than it was, Todd snapped. He could have come in any time if he'd apologized. No, he couldn't, Jessica said suddenly, and every head turned. You locked the door. You told me not to let him in. No matter what. The room fell silent. Todd's face went white, then red, then white again. Jessica, he hissed. What are you doing? Telling the truth, she said, looking at Ethan through tears. For the first time in 3 years, I'm telling the truth. Mrs. Clark, the officer said, stepping in. Has this kind of punishment happened before? Yes. It came out like a dam breaking. He made Ethan sleep in the garage. In the basement. He's locked him out overnight. He controls when Ethan eats, when he showers, when he can speak at the table. Shut up, Todd snarled, mask on. You have no idea what you're doing. You'll ruin everything. What have we built except fear? Jessica snapped back, fire finally lighting. Look at my son. Look what you've done. I watched Ethan's face change as his mom finally stood in his corner. 3 years of self-doubt slid off him like a heavy coat. The lead officer stepped toward Todd. Sir, turn around. Hands behind your back. This is ridiculous, Todd said, backing toward the door. You'll arrest me on the word of a bitter old man and his delusional daughter? On the physical evidence and multiple statements of child endangerment, the cops said, calm as Sunday, pulling cuffs. You have the right to remain silent. As they read him his rights and walked him toward the door, Todd twisted to spit one last poison line at Jessica. You'll regret this. You'll lose the house, the money, everything. You're nothing without me. I'd rather be nothing than watch you hurt my son, she said. And for the first time in years, she sounded like the tough, steady woman who raised Ethan on her own. The door closed behind the officers and their prisoner, and the house sagged into a quiet I hadn't felt in months. Jessica dropped into a chair and sobbed. Not the careful tears she'd trained herself to cry, but deep, wrenching sobs from a place that had been locked up a long time. Ethan knelt beside her. It's okay, Mom. It's over. I'm sorry, she choked. I should have protected you. I should have been stronger. You were strong tonight, I said, settling by the fire. When it mattered most, you chose your kid over your husband. That takes guts. The fire popped and settled, and for the first time in a long while my living room felt like a home again. Not just because my family was safe, but because the truth was finally out and justice had started rolling. Ethan looked at me from where he knelt. "What happens now, Grandpa?" "Now we heal," I said, slow and steady. "We heal.